Microsoft has released their own version of Linux that they use in-house for testing and building applications. They've released it on GitHub, but there's no installer. There's no ISO that you can download to start the installation. You can download the actual source code, and there are instructions there on how to create an ISO file. Well, I'm going to walk you through some of the basic steps, but I'm not going to do the actual installation. I'm just going to give you a few tips to look out for when you're doing the installation. Now, when you want to download the source code, you would go to GitHub. And you don't need to log in. Just click in the search bar and you're looking for Microsoft CBL. I believe that stands for Common Base Linux or something like that. Okay, the first hit on the top is the one that we're looking for. It's called CBL-Mariner. We'll go into that and scroll down. And it says getting started with CBL Mariner. Gives you a little information about it. It says it's mostly used on Azure. Since it's used on Azure, there's no GUI for it that's built in. And there's an issue with the installer where the graphical installation won't show up. I'm going to show you that in just a second here. So you'll scroll down. This getting started is actually a link, so you'll click that. And getting started, you'll hit the toolkit documentation. This quick start guide is another link. And the link on the top says to install the prerequisites. And they're using an apt repository and apt-get, so it's probably an Ubuntu system that they compiled it on. I compiled it on Ubuntu 18.04, 20.04, and I didn't have any problems. I tried it on 21.04 and it would not compile correctly. Well, it would compile, but when I booted the ISO, it gave me an error, so it wouldn't install. So basically, you need a Ubuntu or Debian system. I put it on Debian 11, and it ran fine. And you will follow these instructions to install the dependencies. If you've got multiple processors, install PIGZ. They'll make it a little bit faster. And depending on what operating system you have, it's going to install a different version of this Go. I tried running this add app repository, and it just sat there and eventually gave me an error about not finding the GPG key. So I just skipped over this part of it. But it came in and it installed version 1.13 of this Go. So I had to change this link right here and make it Go-1.13. What you can do is go into user lib and see what version of Go you have and create the appropriate link. I didn't install Docker because I'm not building it for a container. So once you've got the prereqs installed, you come back and you simply just follow these instructions. You're going to clone the CBL Mariner, and you have to make sure that you do the git checkout for the current version. If you don't do this git checkout, the actual compiling is going to error out and give you a message that it can't find some RPM. So once you've done all that, you've installed it, it's going to create an ISO for you. and put there. It'll create an ISO in the CBL Mariner out images full directory. The ISO will have the date that you compiled it and the time that you compiled it. Now I took this ISO and I copied it over to my main Ubuntu box that runs KVM, and I told my new VM that it was going to use the ISO that I copied from the install. So when you go to boot that for the first time, and I'm going to simulate that and tell it to boot again. It's going to come up, it's going to load VM Linux in the init, and then it goes to a login screen. And by default, it goes to a text installer that has speech synthesis enabled. So if you've got speakers, turn them down because it's going to start talking. Now, if you go and you select the graphical installer, when you hit enter, it's going to crash. It's not going to work. That's some type of bug. I don't know how to fix it. All you have to do is type exit. That gets you back to the boot screen. Go down and select the terminal installer and hit next. Then just follow the prompts. You can skip the disk encryption. It'll ask you for a username. You'll type a username and a password. You won't get any options to set up the partitions or anything like that. It will install everything for you. And then once it installs, let me reboot it here. It's going to install the CBL Mariner onto your hard drive. You log in with the username that you created. There's several videos out there that show you how to go through the install. Just search for them and you'll find them. For a package manager, they use tDNF, which is a version of DNF. So if you want to see what repos it's using, it'll show you the base Mariner official and the official for Microsoft and the official updates. And if you want to see what packages are available, it's just like DNF. You can do a search. It'll show you the versions of OpenSSL that you can install. Now, it also comes with DNF. Got to be root to run that. Less. And you get that same screen. And since this is meant to run in Azure, there's no GUI by default. If you want to take the time to figure out how to do that, that's fine. You can see it's release 1.0, codename Mariner. It's the Common Base Linux Mariner, it's what it's called. So I could do a tDNF search Nginx. Again, I have to be sudo. And I could sudo tdnf install. Nginx. Put an extra L in there. And it's running systemctl, so you could check the status of it. Let me go in and I can start Nginx. And you come and you see, and it's running. It's basically like any other Linux. So there's just a few tips there to get you started with Microsoft's version of Linux. Remember, when you're doing the actual generation of the ISO, you want to be in an Ubuntu or a Debian-based system. And when you actually start the installer for the ISO, the graphical installation does not work. Thanks for watching.